You're live.
Okay, it is 7:42, and we are returning from executive session with no action taken. So under D, consideration of appointment for the Elkins Water Board.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer up Carol Kane.
Okay, we have a motion. Any comments or discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, under E, consideration of the appointment of the Elkins Randolph County Public Library.
I'll make a motion to appoint Rebecca Severino to the unexpired term to the Elkins Randolph County Public Library Board.
We have a motion. Any comments or discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, F, discussion of Department of Justice fiscal year 22 comprehensive opioid stimulant and substance abuse site-based program.
Okay, I guess I'm on.
You're on, sir.
The mayor's task force received communication through one of our core group members from a statewide organization I'm quite familiar with called FAHE, F-A-H-E, a short while ago. And Jennifer Griggs, who I've asked to be here tonight because she really is the grant guru, received that communication. They suggested that we consider applying for this grant. It's a very large grant. It's $1 million grant. But in so many respects, it dovetails with the initiatives that we are trying to encourage, that the task force is trying to encourage in the city. And in fact, regionally, because there are so few resources available in the region. It addresses transitional housing, it addresses law enforcement concerns, it addresses clinical treatment and facilities availability. And I've asked Jennifer to be available to all of us tonight. That's why she didn't speak at the public comment section. And Jennifer, may I ask you to come up to the microphone and just kind of shout into it as people ask you questions, or you need to supplement my sketchy information. But it's a lot of money. And the transitional housing is a high priority for us. We are meeting with representative whose organization has done this very, very successfully around the state, has come recommended to us from the former head of the state office for drug control policy, I believe is the official title of that working entity. Anyway, he headed that, but he highly recommended these people because they run a first-rate program. Chief Bennett certainly has some pieces that he would like to be able to put into play from the EPD side, and do that also in collaboration with Sheriff Elbin. What am I missing here, Jennifer?
Well, Dave, I think the applicant has to have policies for excessive force through a law enforcement agency. We already have those, which is the reason we qualify for this grant. There's going to be 25 grants, I guess, provided or distributed. So I think that's one piece that we kind of missed, is you have to have that nexus to law enforcement.
Yeah.
Counselor, I think everyone got the information I sent out with regard to my analysis of some of the basics of the grant. There was some question as to who could apply. It is specifically directed at governmental bodies such as a city or a county or a tribal organization if we're talking about Native Americans. So this is not something that, for instance, the Randolph County Housing Authority, where Jennifer works, they could not apply for this. This is directed only at those bodies. And as if you notice in the...
Counselor, that is correct.
Right.
We who, in a sense, are part of the city of Elkins and are on that task force don't have a particular burning desire for the city to be the applicant in this case, but as our city attorney has pointed out, we are the eligible entity, the city would be. And Jennifer, would you like to talk a little bit about how we would envision this going forward with, let me preface this before I put you on the spot, Fran. Okay, Fahi initially made the contact with us. We are working right now in conversation with Region 7, with Shane Whitehair, who is speaking with his staff, to see if it is going to be possible for them to step in and support us in the grant writing process, and then if we are successful in the grant administration process, so that all of this does not simply fall to our city treasurer. And because writing one of these grants is a substantial undertaking. Jennifer is really great at this, but her plate is extremely full right now. And so we'd originally thought Fahi was going to fill those two roles for us, but their plate already runneth over as well. So we are in conversation, and I wanted to keep this on the agenda tonight. I thought about this a lot this week, so that the door is open with City Council, so that you have a chance to ask questions, voice any concerns, and if we are able to work this out with Region 7, we would then need your approval to proceed. So,
Counselor, do you want to mention the deadlines for the application? Because that's obviously critical to the, any movement if council would decide. I believe it was the 13th for the preliminary information that you have to provide with regard to all of these DOJ grants.
Right.
And then the 17th is the full application and this is all in June. So you're looking at a little less than a month.
Correct.
As far as the applications have to be submitted, just so everyone knows the time frame. And then my understanding, it matches, the awards would become available looking at the federal government's fiscal year, which is really October 1. So if there were funds forthcoming, it wouldn't be, if you were an awardee, you wouldn't have those funds available till then. But the application has to be in those June dates.
And it is a non-matching grant.
I beg your pardon, sir?
And it is a non-matching grant.
Right, no money from the city.
Yes, non-matching grant. We do not have to put up a match of any kind. Counselor, did you see anything in that grant material, in the RFP and informational material, that caused you any concern?
Practically speaking, not legally. I mean, I think you would meet all the criteria, and I believe I attached the pertinent part that says what the monies can be used for, and one of them is transitional housing, clearly. There are many things on those pages. I guess my biggest question is two things, and it sounds like you've sort of talked about that. Number one, who's going to put this application together? Because it's not a simple process. This is a very complicated, I mean, I've looked at their resource books previously. It's not two-pager, and I'm sure Jennifer probably knows a lot more than I do about it. So that was my question. Who's going to do that with a short fuse on the deadline? And number two, who's going to administer it? Even if you have a program in place, you need someone to administer these funds to be sure that all of the pieces are working together, whether you're working with an established agency, nonprofit, health facility, whatever. It's a big task, and it's a lot of money. So those would be my questions, just not on a legal standpoint, but more the practicality of how that's all going to happen, because it's a big job.
Yes.
To make that application. I looked at all the things you've got to do, and it's not simple. It's not, And my experience with grants is they always get more complicated when you're actually doing them than you even think they're going to be when you get into it. So that would be my big concern, is how that's going to get done, by whom, and then who's going to administer it and make sure that all the compliance, because we all know what happens. There are rules about all money that is given.
Which is, yes.
That you have to use it in that appropriate place, in the appropriate manner, and then you're always subject to an audit of the way your funds are being used, et cetera. So those are kind of my just initial concerns. about any type of grant. But as far as the grant and the DOJ and the type of grant this is, I mean, you're clearly eligible, you're in that 1C category, all those things fit. There's no question about your eligibility, it's just about who's going to make it happen.
Thank you.
If we get the grant, there's still that big if.
Well, I'm just talking about the application.
Right.
Who's going to do the application? And of course, you don't know. I mean, no one knows until the decision's made. But the first thing is, my question with those June dates, it's someone's going to be busy. And I don't know if that's something that's been discussed or not.
Well, what we have discussed in terms of hitting that target date, if Region 7 lets us know, and I'm guessing they will tomorrow, that they are willing to try and do that with us, is that the members of the task force will work directly with them to supply them with whatever it is that they need to write a successful application. And while Jennifer does not have the time to write it all, she has said she would be happy to help.
What, could we let her talk a little bit? Yeah. Let's let her talk.
So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer Griggs, and I work for the Randolph County Housing Authority. I am here because Randolph County Housing Authority is a member of the Mayor's Task Force. So this falls into the area in which I work at the Housing Authority, which is the Supportive Services Department, and I'm the program manager. I'm also one of the grant writers for our organization. And so I am familiar, not necessarily with DOJ grants, but I am familiar with DOL grants, HUD grants, and HRSA grants. So I have written all of those before. So my grant experience, I've won some and I've lost some, and that's just kind of how it goes. When I did see this and it was brought to me and I brought it to the task force, it was based on a couple reasons. One, we are Category 1C, which is 100,000 or less. Two, we do have this task force in which we've been working with for over a year now and have created partnerships and relationships with organizations who would be able to support the grant activities. Third, this is just a really good opportunity. As I talked to the task force, even if we go through with this and we write it and we don't get it, the process of going through and writing a grant and getting all of this information and being able to get feedback from the Department of Justice on the grant will only help us in the future get other grants of this size with this department, because we'll have gone through all of those steps. So I feel even if we never get a grant, and we is the general, I've done grants for many different organizations, so I say we, if we don't get the grant, it's still an opportunity for us to have firmed up relationships, have understand what the city is willing or not willing to take on, and ensure that there's the partnerships that are there for moving forward in the future. In the small conversations with Region 7 over the last couple of days, they have indicated that there's a good possibility that they would be willing to take on this grant writing, and potentially administration. That is something that they would have to still internally discuss. The time for most people, you look at this time frame and say June 13th and say, oh my gosh, that doesn't scare me whatsoever. That's still over 2 weeks away. What I think the task force has 3 main things that they wanted to focus on. So if you've looked at the grant, I just want to highlight those 3 main things that the task force has identified as focus. Number 1 is education and prevention programs to connect law enforcement agency with K through 12 students. That's very important. We realize that in order to combat SUDS, we need to start at a young age. So that was one of the activities that the task force and Chief Bennett really wanted to focus on, as well as the sheriff also spoke about that, and that would be a focus for him. The number 2 item is court programming to prioritize and expedite treatment and recovery services for individuals at high risk of overdose, as well as services for children and youth impacted by their parents or other families' substance use. So again, that would potentially be enhancement to the local drug court here in the area, but that would also be working with other child support agencies to ensure those children that are involved in households that have some drug abuse, some substance abuse or court, that they are being taken care of. So this would help that. And of course, the third is the transitional or recovery housing. There is a limit on this grant of no more than 30%. So on $1 million grant, that would be $300,000. So for transitional housing. We fully understand. We had a meeting with the Public Safety Committee, and they asked some wonderful questions, and I think have a good idea of what it is. But I know they just really wanted to bring this to the council as a first discussion, because if the council feels that this is not the best use of the city's time, should we get it starting in October? And if this isn't something, then there's no reason for it to be pursued. So I know that was one of the reasons why it wanted to be brought as a discussion today. I am very much willing, because this serves the community, and that is, I do human services at the Housing Authority. So this falls into my human services serving the community, because the folks here are the ones who we work with at the Housing Authority. So we would prefer to be able to do education and help them now, so they may not have to use some of our other services in the future.
So if I understand it correctly, like even with the third category, the transitional housing, so who would be in charge of that section? I mean, because I know even if we do find out that we will have the grant writing and then the afterwards, the post, all the documentation and all that stuff will be done, that's cool. That makes a huge difference in our, at least for me, in the decision-making process. But then who will, for example, with the transitional housing, who takes that on?
So in this and in a lot of grants like this that are very large for cities,
Yes.
similar to what you guys do with the ARPA grant, and I'm just saying similar in the fact that you receive the grant funds,
Right.
and then you have some grant sub-awardees or sub-recipients of the grant who would tackle specific things.
So would that be you
ultimately,
guys doing?
for the transitional housing,
Yes.
it potentially could be us, or there are 2 other partners that the task force is aware of that is working in the transitional house space. So it's not necessarily the housing authority. There is other partners out there. I don't know if it's appropriate to name their names because they haven't publicly
Sure,
said,
sure.
But
Sure.
in the task force, when we have our partner meetings or community service meetings, there have been a variety of service partners who have said, these are the things that we're willing to take on. And so we would go back to them and do this. The other thing at the public service meeting, they did ask, before anything come to the council for vote, and I think there was 2 more meetings, if I'm not mistaken, before the 13th, that the next meeting, that there was an abstract or a conceptual plan that the council knows on, these are what we're going for, this is the basic budgets, these are the basic partners that are gonna be doing it, this is the city's responsibility, so forth and so on. So,
That would be really helpful.
so I mean, we're past the concept, we understand the concept, we have in our mind who the players are going to be or the other organizations that would support the city in this. But we don't want everybody to do the work if we don't think we can get A, the grant writer, and B, if the council's gonna say no. Cause I have other grants, I have another grant due July 8th, so I can spend time on that one.
I think it'll be really important to find out what the answer is to whether we have
Right.
somebody able to do, because that is huge. And the reason I was asking about who will actually do this is because I've been involved with grants, and you have like this cadre of volunteers, and they're trying to do everything that was explicit in the grant. So if there's a commitment by certain
There
parties
would be-
in that
there would be-
fleshing out
I'm
document.
assuming, making an assumption, that instead of just letters of commitment, that it would be MOUs, memorandums of
Okay.
understandings.
Yeah.
That were in place and submitted, because there has to be information of partnership submitted with this grant, that there would be MOUs submitted with that, and so the partnering organizations with the cities would have a legal binding document when the grant is submitted.
That's huge. That
Yeah.
makes a big difference.
Yeah, this is not
yeah.
this is not intended to be a volunteer-run thing. This is appropriate organizations that have the skill set, the capacity
Good.
to ensure deliverables.
Right. Because it's just looking over it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not in our
Wheelhouse.
job description. Even as a city,
Right.
we do wonderful, wonderful things, and we have this great task force, but we need the agencies that
Right.
this is what they do,
Right.
to be the ones who actually do it.
And side note, even to this grant here, there is more federal funding coming down that I've been seeing that only go to counties or cities, but they expect other agencies to do the work.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that this is gonna become more and more, not necessarily in this realm, but in other realms, the structure of federal to state or federal to cities and counties, and then go to the organizations. Because that puts in, like Counselor said, that puts in the city's ultimately responsible for what happens.
And I will add that on June 7th, we are having a public forum to let everyone know what progress we've made with the task force. It'll be at the Phil Gaynor Community Center at, 6 o'clock, I believe? So you're more than welcome to attend to find out what progress. A lot of our partners will be there for that meeting, so it's very educational.
May I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
So I know at the public safety meeting, you talked about Fahey was going to be involved. Looks like they're out of the picture now, correct?
Correct.
They're just too busy,
Yeah,
which
it just
makes,
didn't, yeah, it's
Yeah.
like when we had those discussions, it was, they couldn't pull it together.
and that's who brought it to your attention,
Correct.
correct? Counties can also apply for this.
Correct.
Is there any interest at the county level? Does anyone know, those that are involved? I mean, I don't know, I'm
have
just
not-
curious.
I have not spoken to the county because I don't feel that would be my role.
No, I didn't mean you particularly, but I know so the sheriff's on your task force, right? I didn't know if there were any other county officials or not. I just was asking a question, since they are an eligible applicant.
Not that we're aware of.
Okay. And also, I don't know if maybe Fahey mentioned this to you at all. Of course, the state can apply for this too. They're the other
Right.
type of applicant. Did they give you any indication that the state is thinking about doing this? Because they're in a totally different category.
Yeah, no, they did not give me any indication, and I also asked them if they were writing it for any other partners
Right.
in their
Group,
system,
and there's a
she
lot of
said-
people.
And they said no, they were not providing the service to any other ones.
Okay, thank you.
So it is still a competitive grant. There's
Sure.
25 grants that will be given or awarded,
In,
country.
Oi. But we're West Virginia.
We're West Virginia.
Yeah, that's the next.
And we, like I said, the task force has been working on things, and we have some great partnerships in these realms and in the DOJ world. Any other questions? Okay, thank you,
Thank you, Jennifer.
no problem.
Thank you, Jennifer. She's good. We will let you know we'll give you the earliest possible notice if we're going to ask to bring this to the floor for a vote. And as Jennifer said, we'll have a synopsis ready for everybody. So that you essentially know what's going to be in the proposal.
Yeah, and let us know if we have the grant writer, if they agree to do the grant.
Yeah. Because as was noted by our attorney, they're complex grants to write. They just simply are. And the concerns about administration are well-founded. And that is why the question has been raised with Region 7 and their staff, because they have extensive experience administering these particular kinds of grants. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Bringing that to us.
Before we move to item G, I'm going to go back a little bit because Chief Himes has returned to give him an opportunity to take the podium. Welcome back, Chief.
Apologies for my hasty exit. The only thing I had to report on tonight, we completed hose testing last week. My initial estimate numbers were a little off for you. We've got 2,500 new feet of hose that has been purchased in the last year, and it was tested at the time of purchase, so we don't have to test it. We get one free year on that. So in a 5-day period, we tested 11,050 feet, I believe, and we only lost one section.
Wow.
They had a damaged coupler, and it wouldn't even thread up, so it was about a 11-year-old section and was on its way out anyway, so. And we did, I don't know if anybody saw it on Facebook or not, I reported at the last meeting, working in conjunction with some members of the Beverly Fire Department. We sent coverage crews to Braxton County on Monday and Tuesday of last week to assist with their line of duty death. And we were stationed in Burnsville and welcomed with open arms and never turned a wheel and came home safe and sound. And so other than that, anybody have any questions for me? See,
Thank you, Chief.
I could have waited till next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I wanted to give you the opportunity, sir. And also gave us a break in between grant discussions, so. Okay, G, discussion of Department of Justice fiscal year 22 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program.
All right, so this is also known as the Smart Cities Grant. This is designed to bolster technology across the city and allow us to do our jobs a little bit more efficiently and effectively. This would be a $950,000 grant, and it's also a no-match grant. There's a couple of different projects that would fall underneath this, but the main one would be the installation of street cameras that we would be able to place throughout the city. They would have license plate reader technology and really make Elkins a lot safer place and allow the police department to really move into the area that we need to be in to police in 2022. However, the benefits of this are not just for the police department. It's going to benefit basically every section of the city. Operations will be able to use it to monitor the conditions of the roadways, to see when we need to put plow crews out on the roads, things like that. Fire department will be able to use it to monitor anything that they want to. We would be able to, for both of those departments, if we had a major accident somewhere or a hazmat incident, anything of that nature, we'd be able to scout out the area prior to us getting there. We'd be able to pull it up in our vehicles, take a look at what we're getting ready to get ourselves into. And for the citizens, it has huge benefits for them. Our ability to solve crimes and close cases with a system like this would be greatly enhanced. And that's not only criminal cases. If you think about car accidents, the number of intersections, roadways that we have in the city, that we have an accident, and by the time we get there, either the vehicles are moved or we get there and there's no witnesses, and one driver's saying, yeah, he ran the red light, the other one's saying he ran the red light. We have no way of knowing. At this point, we have no way of knowing, unless there's a camera from a store or something covering it. We have no way of knowing. So what happens in that instance? Well, we can't determine fault in an accident. The insurance company of both drivers ends up paying for that. So the rates increase for both people. Something like this, where we would have every single intersection covered, all we got to do is back up the tape, and we'll know exactly what happened there. And we'll know exactly who's at fault and exactly who should be responsible for covering that accident. Not to mention more serious things, violent crime, things like this. With this system, we would be able to identify somebody on camera and then the system would automatically show us every other camera in the city that that person passed in front of. We would basically be able to go from the point of the crime until that person was out of camera view of the entire city and be able to follow that person or vehicle or any other item of interest that we can program into it. It's very, very advanced. It's, again, this is something that's being used all over. I have a list of the customers just in the state of West Virginia that are using these systems. And we're talking about places like the city of Morgantown, Morgantown Airport, Bridgeport, Huntington, Clarksburg, Parkersburg, Summersville, Granville, Harrison County, Whitehall, Billington has, I think, one of their cameras up right now with license plate reader technology, and 33 out of the 55 county school systems are using this system. So I think it would be a very, very good decision for the city to apply for this grant and hopefully win it and adopt a system like this.
How do you make a decision on where you place the cameras?
We've already done a site visit with the company to identify locations throughout the city. And on that site visit, I would say that we didn't lowball anything, but we didn't go extraordinary either. We were pretty conservative, and we identified between 65 and 70 cameras that we would need that covers pretty much just the downtown and the 5-lane. And the parks, absolutely. With that, the overall cost of this system was right around $200,000 for the camera systems and the installation. The grant is $950,000. With this grant, I would like to bolster that number of cameras, and I think we would be closer to the $300,000 to $350,000 range of expenditure for camera and installation on that, which would give us a lot more coverage area.
Is any part of the grant, are you able to, does it have to be all infrastructure and stuff like that, or can you hire somebody to be monitoring, or is that?
We're not going to have somebody monitor
How is
constantly.
that? So
I
it
mean,
would just be your ability to look back at them.
or forward. I mean, we can look real time as we're responding to something, or if we have something going on, to get on and go back. From my perspective, I don't think it would be feasible to have a person monitoring cameras all the time.
Right.
I just don't think that's feasible, except for certain events. During the Forest Festival, I'm probably going to have somebody watching cameras the entire time and watching what's going on downtown, given the number of people in the town and stuff.
Are schools included in this?
The schools are not at this point. However, Randolph County Schools is talking to this company. We've put them in connection with them, so I think that might be, they're looking at it.
Is this a grant we can apply for, the city can apply for and administer, or does it require an
Yes.
outside agency?
Actually, the way this would work was, we've been approached by both senators' office. We provide them a white paper, and they actually apply on our behalf. Is the way this one works.
Oh.
After the initial grant period, what's the responsibility for the
Can you use your microphone, please? Sorry.
Her question was, after the initial grant funding, what our responsibility would be for this system. Included in the initial fee from this company is every piece of hardware and the licensing for 10 years. That includes all maintenance, all software upgrades. If you have a broken camera, you'll have another one in about 2 days for 10 years. From the time you make the initial investment, you will not pay another penny for 10 years to have this system. At the end of that 10 years, you have a couple different options. If at that point, technology goes crazy in 10 years the way it is now. In 10 years, if we felt that we needed to upgrade the camera systems and replace them, we could do that, and we would be right back where we are right now with the entire investment up front. If not, if we were happy with our cameras still, all we would have to do would be renew the licensing on it. And to renew that licensing at today's cost, of course, we can't predict what it's going to be in 10 years, but at today's cost, to renew that license for all of the cameras would be $77,000 for another 10 years. So less than $8,000 a year to maintain this system.
Is that something that the police department could feel like they could budget for on an annual basis to pay for it come 10 years?
10 years from now is a long time to forecast what's going on, so I can't say for sure that I could, but.
It's a shocking amount when you just try to pay $77,000 all of a sudden. So it's just a thought, something for finance to consider. Because you need to pay for it if you're going to keep it.
Yeah, and again, in 10 years, there may be some other system that we're completely starting over with. It's hard to say.
So what do we need to do?
It's just a discussion item,
Okay.
This
right?
this is kind of time sensitive.
Yeah, what's the deadline for?
This, if we're going to do it, I believe we need voted on tonight because it's due next
Oh,
week.
it's due next week, no. I haven't seen the documents, I didn't know, sorry. I just thought it was for discussion, I didn't realize you had that short of a deadline.
Chief Bennett, do I remember correctly that a representative from the company is willing to come here and speak with council to answer any questions firsthand that they may have about the system, and obviously any contract would have to be approved by our city attorney, so.
Yeah, our representative with Verkada has said many times that he would be willing to come here and give demonstrations. He has given a demonstration. Some of the council members have already seen a demonstration on this system. When we first initially started this and were briefed on it the first time, we invited, I believe it was public safety and finance to both sit in on the initial demonstration, along with the county commission and sheriff and a few other people. So some of you have an idea of what the capabilities of this system are already. I spoke with Max, our representative, 2 days ago, and he said that at any time that anybody would want a Zoom demonstration of it, he would be able to set it up in just a couple days, and we could do another one.
Or he would do it in person as well, he said.
So do we need a motion to?
If this is a discussion, can we actually do that? When it's titled discussion on the agenda?
You could take action, some sort of action in support of it. I'm curious as to if the white paper has been drafted and submitted, or if that's, because I didn't have access to it. The information that you have in your packets just came directly from the website. That's the only information that I had available. And then the other question would be, this is obviously over the threshold to bid this project out. So there needs to be some consideration of that or discussion about if you're planning to do that, and if not, does it meet one of the exceptions?
So can I ask a question? I just want to make sure I got this, Chief. What you're talking about getting the applications in for, that the mayor discussed, that our two senators are involved in, that deadline's like next week, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And then, of course, I know you've been talking with the company that's been doing this all over the country. There's no commitment to them at this point. It's just a matter of, they've done it in a lot of places around here. They've been successful. They've come to give you sort of their deal on this, and this is how it works and whatever. So these are really two separate things. If indeed you were successful in getting this grant, then the second part would be dealing with this company, or however you want to deal with it.
Correct.
Because there are clearly exceptions, as Jessica pointed out, for not bidding something out that's over $25,000. You would just have to see if this would fit in one of those categories. But
think-
you don't have to decide that tonight.
No, I think what we're looking for right now is just, I'll say, permission to move forward to apply for a grant
Right.
that we may or may not get.
Yeah,
You know,
and if you don't get it,
I mean,
there's-
and that's what it comes
yeah.
down to. We may or may not get it. If we don't apply, we know we're not getting it, but, you know, there's a lot of money that's going to be spent out there, so we should try to be competitive, in my opinion. And as Chief Bennett
Councilor
said,
Roberts.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to ask our attorney if there are any legal issues that she's aware of with what we're talking about.
I've never seen the grant information. I don't know anything about it. I mean,
No, I mean, like the use of camera systems and so forth.
oh, you mean like expectation of privacy, that sort of thing?
Yes.
Well, if you're in the public, in a public domain, there is no expectation of privacy. Imagine if you walk down the street, there are cameras on some of the businesses. You walk into Walmart or drive in their parking lot, drive into Kroger parking lot, Walgreens parking lot, they know you're in the parking lot. They know you're in the store. They know when you leave, when you come. I mean, they're kind of everywhere. If you're talking about constitutional issues with regard to that, surveillance cameras are used worldwide, nationally, at the local level. They're used in private businesses, they're used in cities, they're used in airports, they're used in all kinds of public places. So that whole concept, I know there are people that feel they are an invasion of your privacy, but as far as constitutionally, you generally do not have an expectation of privacy in the public domain. You just don't. It's different in your home, different in certain places, but not the type of thing where you're talking about street cameras or cameras in parking lots, that sort of thing. There is no expectation of privacy there.
Well, I think the second part also, we have no commitment to Verkada, but we could bring them for a demo to show the type of technology we're looking at. They're probably one of two companies that provide this kind of technology to this degree that we know of. So like I said, we have no commitment to them at all if we are awarded the grant. But like I said, we could give you a demo to show you the types of technology and the capabilities these kind of systems have.
I think we should move forward with it.
Do the cameras that you're proposing, do they pick up audio, or is it just visual?
As far as I can remember, they do not do audio. It is just video.
However,
the
in 10
best
years they
thing-
may.
I really don't want to sit and give away all of the cameras' functions in a public setting. I would encourage you, if we have the opportunity to do another demo, to set in.
Chief, what about data storage and access on the video? Are we talking about considering that it may be used in a court case? Are we talking about the same levels of limited access and control and so forth that we're dealing with on the body cams?
Yes.
And that's all provided as a part of the package?
Every bit of that is included in the initial cost.
Chief, sorry, just for my clarification, so that you can ask to up to $950,000?
Correct.
That's not a set amount like the previous grant, right?
Correct.
So
That's
the
the
ask
amount.
would be around 350 is what you're,
We're being recommended
Yeah.
to ask for $950 from the senator's offices.
what would the additional funds be used
The
for?
network to help support these systems and connect the rest of the city, to make the rest of the smart city program out there.
Which is what?
Well, there's a program out there that would allow citizens to, if they're witnessing a crime that's being committed, we can put QR codes throughout the city. A citizen can just snap a photo or a video, go to the QR code, snap that photo of it, and it sends it directly to the police department. Putting in a network out there that actually connects all the departments together so they can communicate, because we currently don't have that. There's other sensors that will track traffic for you to let you know if you have traffic issues, if we have to start redirecting traffic and stuff like that, monitors your speeds for you.
It's a lot, and it's not anything that's been brought up, so I think it's really important for council to be aware of what they're asking for.
I have to, I'm a little skeptical of it, honestly. In the the reason why is the cost down the road. And the budget right now for the police department is huge. And 10 years from now, $77,000, I don't know what it may be used for, but I can right now think of a lot of things that $77,000 could be used for that would improve Elkins. And I also think that there could be some uncomfortableness in the public about it, whether or not, how they feel about having cameras everywhere, even though I think some cameras somewhere would be helpful. But I just have to say, I don't think I know enough about this. I don't feel that comfortable voting for it right now. I'm sorry, but I'm just not there. Thank you.
And others of us may or may not be. I have heard from people who are not affiliated with council in any way, other than they're citizens. And they've expressed discomfort to me about that sense of Big Brother surveilling them. And I understand the law enforcement side of this, I think, really pretty well. And, but I also understand that citizen concern side. And, you know, it's like, do you want Alexa to be in your bedroom? For me, the answer is pretty simple. So, I mean, I think there's that piece of it, and I guess I would say to any of us, and anyone you may speak with who has a question, let us know what the questions are. And then we can answer, or at least make a real honest effort to answer those questions, or to respond to a particular set of concerns. But that's why I thought that to have a good discussion here tonight was essential, rather than just trying to say, oh, let's vote on this, that y'all have really not, you've not had time and information to consider.
I would just like to know more about how the public would, at large would feel. I just don't know that answer.
I'm sure that the same people who would have a problem with those cameras would be the first ones that would want it when them or one of their family members are a victim of a violent crime.
Are we up against the deadline for applying for this?
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
that's what-
So we don't have another council meeting before this. And so applying for it does not necessarily guarantee that we have to.
Absolutely not.
You know, it troubles me that we continue to have issues placed before this council that are in many cases huge amounts of money, and it's always, oh, we got to do this right away because we've got a deadline approaching. And the other part of it that bothers me is that, oh, the senator's office has asked us to submit this stuff, and we as a council haven't had a chance to research it and discuss it except right before the deadline. So whether you philosophically agree with having cameras or not, which Councilman Quanzo, I certainly respect what you're saying, and I agree with you. I think it's ridiculous that as a city council that we're having to come into these meetings and make rush decisions without the kind of background information where it's always nebulous. We're going to maybe do this, and we're maybe going to do this, and it may cost this much, and we may not bid it, and it's just ridiculous that we're doing these kind of things. And that being said, I would not support moving forward with this at this time. Thank you.
The Public Service Committee,
Public safety.
what?
Public safety.
Public Safety Committee has had some information on this several months ago, I believe. Chief Bennett?
It was the last Public Safety Committee. And to respond to you, Councilman, that's the nature of grants, especially when they come from the federal side. By the time that grant's announced and we can find it and schedule that for a committee meeting, to put it before a committee, and then wait for that committee to push it on to council, you're up against the deadline. This particular grant, the release date was April 11th. So that's the nature of a federal grant and the schedule of committee and council meetings.
With all due respect, Chief Bennett, and I respect everything your department does, and I respect the work that your people do. I've worked with grants much of my career, okay? There is no reason when you're up against the deadline not to call special meetings of public safety or special meetings of council to discuss things of this magnitude. And I'm not being critical of the need for this. I don't mean that at all. I'm just saying the process that we as a council are following at this point, and you can look over the last 3, 4, 5 council meetings, we've been talking about grants that have a deadline of tomorrow, and rush, we gotta do it right now. I'm concerned about the process, not about the issue that's facing us as far as getting these cameras. So,
Well, am I mistaken? It sounds like it did already go to public safety, right? You all already discussed it, and you had given the thing with finance as well? Or you invited the finance committee to come?
That did not have, that was before this grant solicitation ever
Okay.
opened. That was specifically for the demo with the camera systems.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. And this has no, except for the possibility that in 10 years, we would want to renew it. Other than that, the financial commitment on the part of the city is 0 for 10 years.
Correct.
To have this in place. And I guess I've watched enough British crime shows where they're all going, have you checked the CCTV, to find out if there's any films on criminal activity. And just, for example, the recent episode at the parks, the police department can't be everywhere all the time. And I totally respect people's concerns about privacy, but the rate of crime is just escalated to the level that our staff, our crew, can't be everywhere at the same time. And I totally understand the difficulties with this process, and I know, Jessica just said that we need to figure out a better way to do this, but that really is the case. You find out about these grants, you need to move forward with them. This is something that we might not get, but I would vote in favor of it, of moving forward.
Mike, Rob, what do you guys think?
Is it appropriate to make a motion to proceed? So I'll make the motion.
Okay, is your motion to proceed on applying for it then?
Applying for the grant, yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Any other comments or discussion?
I suggest a roll call vote.
So roll call vote to proceed on the Department of Justice Fiscal Year 22 Edward Burr Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program. in the amount of $950,000, is that
Yes,
accurate?
whatever the chief is recommending.
Okay. Counselor Guy?
Yes.
Counselor Vest is absent. Counselor Quanzo?
No.
Counselor Friddle?
No.
Counselor Bras Fraganera?
Yes.
Counselor Lowther?
Yes.
Counselor Chenoweth?
Yes.
Counselor Parker?
Yes.
Counselor Higgins is absent. Counselor Hinchman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to mayor's comments now. I will recognize that Ms. Quanzo had a birthday earlier this week, so we'd like to celebrate that. Happy birthday, happy belated birthday. Saturday, it was kind of a special day. We got to have the Hooked on Fishing, Not on Drugs back after a 2-year hiatus, and we had a tremendous turnout there. There were approximately 1,200 children that came through that program. I want to personally say thank you to Mike and Charlie and Dave for all your dedicated time over there working with the children. You guys are having a blast when I went by, so you had a lot of fun with it. So I appreciate you doing that. It was kind of fun watching that setting. So thank you. I got to leave there and go to the Babe Ruth opening ceremony, and I will tell you the board and the players were very appreciative of the money that was provided for the bleachers over there, so thank you for that as well. And then earlier this week, I got to host 2 different first grade classes from Third Ward throughout the building. And it's kind of hard to compete with pizza at Papa John's and Bird's Donuts, but we had fun, and all the admin officers stepped up and made them feel welcome, and they had a blast. So I want to thank you for that. So with that said, I will look for a motion to adjourn.